Good morning, one and all present. I, Dhruti Jogi, on behalf of College of Architecture, SVIT Vasad, take the privilege to welcome Professor Binit Patel. He is working as an assistant professor in Indukaka Ipkowala Institute of Management, a constitute of Charotar University of and Science and Technology, Charusat. He has been teaching courses in area of business statistics management, information systems, application of research methodology, research methods of management, operation research, business mathematics, marketing management, product and brand management, system analysis, and design, uh, re- design relational database management system, and many more. He has completed his graduation in computer science and engineering from V. Narmad South Gujarat University, Surat, and postgraduated in business administration with specialization in marketing from Indu Kaka Ipkowala Institute of Management, Gujarat University, Ahmedabad. He has completed executive program in business analytics and IIM Kozhikode. He has participated and successfully completed faculty development program on multivariate data analysis at IIM Kozhikode. He has total of 10 plus years of teaching experience at undergraduate. He has guided more than 200 PG and 150 UG students for the summer internship program, organizational attachment program, and comprehensive project. Thank you. Now I request Taha sir.
Yes, I would
Daha
request.
sir, please
Yeah.
play the video and then we will address principal sir for the address.
Thank you, Taha sir. Now I would request Principal Sir Professor Shailesh Nair to address us.
Hello, good morning, everybody. Today we are privileged to have Professor Binit Patel, who is an assistant professor in Indukaka Ipkowala Institute of Management of Charator University of Science and Technology. One thing which I want to tell the students is the interest and the initiative we are taking for your subject of thesis orientation. Today, Professor Binit Patel will be addressing on an apt topic for your thesis orientation, that is research and dissertation. And I'm sure that his lecture will give a new dimensions to how you are thinking about your thesis and your thesis topic. So I want heartily welcome Professor Binit Patel for this session. Thank you, sir, for accepting our offer and joining us today. The whole dais is yours.
Thank you very much, sir, for inviting me and for kind words and kind introduction. Sorry. Without wasting much time, let me start sharing the presentation and then we'll deliver the session. So, is my screen visible to you?
Yeah.
Yeah, all right, fine. So let me start with the topic research process. Now, before we begin this topic, we must understand what is research. So let me ask you a few questions first. What is research according to you? I don't want exact formal definition of a research, but what is your understanding of research? How do you interpret research? If anyone from you can, yeah, please. If you can share what is your thought.
Students, you may please answer, students.
Anyways, fine. So research is basically inventing new knowledge, contributing to existing knowledge. So it is basically a systematic process or scientific process by which one can invent a new knowledge. So there is always a literature available with us. We can always refer to the literature, but then literature are not sufficient to solve current problems, contemporary problems. So that is why we need to focus more on the contemporary solution, and for that purpose we need to use systematic approach, a scientific approach through which we will be able to identify possible problems and possible solutions to that problem. So that is why we need to use this research. Now when we are talking about research, it has a basic process, scientific process. Okay, so you will have to identify or define the objectives. Once you define the objectives, you will have to select the best possible methodology through which you will be able to get the data and analyze the data. And once you collect the data and analyze the data, you will have to identify possible solutions or possible causes to the problem, and that will help organizations to take decisions. So we will have to use a scientific approach, that is a process. So let me start with the process and the steps involved in the research process. So if we talk about research process, the first and foremost thing is to develop objectives. Now in the first step itself, you will have to develop the objectives. For what purpose you need to conduct a research, for what is the objective for which you are conducting a research. Now this is basically a broad part. You will have to define broad objectives, and then ultimately once you go with the literature review, you can narrow down your objectives. So first and foremost thing, to develop broad objective for what purpose you are conducting a research. So that is the basic step that you need to define at the first stage when you are starting your research. So broad objectives are defined at the first stage of the research itself. Once you have defined the broader objective, in some cases you will go for the problem identification. For some cases you will go for the solutions to the problem. Now there are situations where we are not clear about the problem, and there are situations where we have clear-cut pinpointed problem with us and we want to identify possible solutions to that problem. So you will have to define for what purpose you are going to conduct a research. Now let me give you one example. Suppose, let's say, employees working in an office which you have designed are not happy, are not satisfied. Now what can be the possible problem here? Can someone please tell me what can be the possible problem? Employees working in an office which you have designed are not satisfied with their working environment. Now what can be the possible problem for this?
Less light,
Fine.
less natural light.
Good, great. Yes, then?
Poor ventilation.
Okay.
Seating arrangement.
Right. Poor ventilation. Okay, then. Now all of you are looking the problem from the architectural point of view. Now there are multiple problems, right? The employees are not satisfied because of they are not getting poor pay packages. They are not satisfied because they don't have proper subordinates. They are not happy with their work environment. Okay, now if these are not the possible problems, you can go for less lighting, maybe poor sitting arrangement, maybe poor ventilation, maybe poor ambience. So these are the problems. They are not satisfied is the cause. Okay, that is the symptom. Now based on the symptom, first of all, if we are not clear about the problem, you have to go with the qualitative research. Now in majority of cases, we can use qualitative research when we have symptoms, not the problem. We have symptoms like employees are not satisfied in the office. Now we want to identify what will be the possible problem, pinpointed problem to this symptom, right? So in that case, we can use qualitative research. So use of qualitative research is to identify the problem. So in many of the cases, if we are not sure about the problem, we want to explore the situation, we want to understand the situation, we want to explore the clear-cut problem. So in that case, we need to use qualitative research. So in majority of cases, not all the cases, but in majority of cases, if you are not aware about the clear problem, you can start with qualitative research. In many cases, if you have problem, let's say less light is a problem that you have identified through qualitative research. Now you want to identify possible solutions. And when you want to identify possible solutions, there is another method, another type of research that is known as quantitative research. So in majority of cases, when you have problem and you want to identify why this is happening, what will be the possible solutions to this problem, in that case, we can go with the quantitative research. In other words, qualitative research deals with qualitative data. Data which is not there in numbers can be considered as a qualitative data. And when you are dealing with qualitative data, you must use qualitative research. So when you are not aware about the problem, in that case, we will have to work with qualitative data and qualitative research. On other hand, if you have problems ready with you, you know that this is the problem, and for this problem you want to identify the solution. So in that particular case, you will have to deal with the numbers, and quantitative data, as its name suggests, we will have to work with the numbers, numerical data. And when you are dealing with pure numbers or numerical data, the research that you are going to use will be quantitative research. So first, once you identify the broader objective, you have to identify which type of research would be appropriate for your objectives. Is it qualitative? If you want to understand the situation, if you want to explore the situation or the scenarios, if you want to identify the problem, you should go with the qualitative research. But if you have problems ready with you and you want to identify possible causes or possible solutions, in that particular case, you will have to use quantitative research. Now, before we identify this, you will have to collect secondary data. So once you define the objective, the next thing is you need to collect secondary data. Now, this is the phase where we will have to work with literature review. So all available literatures you will have to go through. You can identify some of the possible parameters or variables that can be included in your research study. If you are going for research, you can always develop a conceptual model in the first step that you can test using quantitative or descriptive research. So by using literature review, we have to identify what are the possible problems on which research has already been done. And that can help you in designing your own research methodology. If someone has already done research on your objectives, on your topic, you can always take reference from that particular research. I'm not saying that you have to copy that, but you can always take reference to design your own research methodology. Suppose if someone has used a questionnaire, you can use the same questionnaire as it is. It is not copying of the the resources, you can use same questionnaire as it is, but then the context should be different. So someone has performed a research using a questionnaire for Mumbai city. Now you cannot use the same for Mumbai city. You have to use same questionnaire for some other city, for your own or different context, right? So you can use that, but before that you will have to surf through all available literature, and that will going to help us to develop conceptual model that you can test using descriptive research. It can help you in designing research methodology, how many samples you should consider for your research, what are the possible methods that you can use for your research, what is the possible variables that you have to include in your research. So this will always help us as a reference. So literature review is a must when you are performing any kind of research. So literature review will always give us the idea, the foundation of the new research. So that is about secondary data. Now, if you are talking about secondary data, then we must understand what is primary data as well. So there are basically two types of data. If you are talking about broad categories of data, let me remove all this. Then we have primary data, and then we have secondary data. Secondary data are already published somewhere in some form. It is available in database, it is available on government portal, it is available through census, it is available on newspaper, magazines, or somewhere else. So it is already published and authenticated by some user. Just a second. Okay. If you have any questions, you can unmute yourself and raise your query at any point of time. Just to stop me and ask questions, because I have shared my screen, so I will not be able to see the comments, right? So please don't post your questions in the comment. Instead, you can unmute yourself, stop me, and ask your questions. So secondary data is already published. You can use that data for your objectives as well. Suppose if you find secondary data available that can satisfy all your objectives, if you are having secondary data that can satisfy all your broader objectives, your research type would be secondary research. Okay, secondary data is available that can satisfy all your objectives, your research type would be secondary research. But in some cases, you may not find all the data available that can satisfy your current studies objective. So in that case, you will have to collect fresh data from the market. Now you can collect through questionnaire, you can collect through interviews, you can collect through observations, you can collect data through experimentation as well. So you can collect data through any other means, but if you are collecting it for very first time for your own objective, that means you are using primary data and your research type would be primary research. So that is the difference between secondary research and primary research. So if secondary data is available to fulfill all your objectives, your research would be secondary research. But if secondary data is not fulfilling your current objectives or partially fulfilling your current objectives, in that case, you need to collect fresh data from the market or from the client itself. And in that case, if you are collecting fresh data, the data which you are collecting is primary data, and the research type would be primary research. So first of all, you need to collect secondary data. And if you feel this data is not sufficient to fulfill your objectives, you will have to go for primary research. And for primary research, there are two types, as I have discussed. One is qualitative and second one is quantitative, right? So under primary research, when you want to collect fresh data for your own objective, you have to go for either qualitative research in case if you want to identify the problem, or if you want to explore the situation, or if you want to dig out some facts from the situation, you can always use qualitative. And if you are looking for solutions to the possible problem, causes to the possible problem, in that case you can use quantitative, where you will have to deal with the numerical data, right? So this is the bifurcation of the research. So in a broader terms, there are two types of research. One is primary research, another one is secondary research. Under primary, again we have two types, qualitative and we have quantitative, right? So depending on the requirement, you can use any one of this researches. Now, if you want to go for problem identification, in that case, you will have to use qualitative research. Now, if you want to conduct qualitative research, there are many methods which you can use So under qualitative, there are 4 methods which we can use, which deals with qualitative data. So for qualitative data, first one is depth interview. Depth interview, it is nothing but one-to-one interview. It is known as one-to-one interview that you can use to collect data from your client, from your respondents, or from customer. Okay. The second one is focus group interview. Now there is a difference between these two types of method. I will discuss this in detail later on, but I'm just briefing you about the possible methods which we can use if you want to use qualitative research. So focus group interview includes many users, okay, many clients at a single platform, and there is always one interviewer. So one interviewer will ask or throw questions to different participants or different clients or customers, and based on their response, we'll try to analyze the data. That is focus group. In depth interview, it is one-to-one, while in focus group, it is one-to-many. Then we have projective techniques. So if you want to identify underlying motivation, the behavior of an individual, their personality and their thinking pattern, in that case we can use projective techniques. Before we design any specific infrastructure to a specific person, we need to understand their behavior, their psychology, their personality, and accordingly we can suggest them different types of designs, right? So it is important to understand individual psychology first, and when we want to understand individual psychology, that means behavior, thinking pattern, learning abilities, so in that case we will have to use projective techniques. And last we have is metaphor analysis. So this is basically understanding of psychology through multiple pictures. So I will discuss that later on, but let us discuss all this in details one by one. So the first one is depth interview. So we'll discuss depth interview first. It is also called one-on-one interview. So there is always one interviewer and one interviewee. We need this to identify requirements. Requirements can be considered as a part of research as well, right? So it is not always that you have to perform core research when you are dealing with clients. So in multiple cases, if you are dealing with clients, if you want to understand their requirements, you are actually performing a research, and for that purpose you can use this particular method called depth interview. So you can have your client and you can ask a few questions to understand their requirement, their behavior and their psychology, and accordingly you can suggest them solutions, right? So it is known as one-to-one interview. This usually lasts for 20 minutes to 1 hour. So you can always have a session of 20 minutes to 1 hour where you can interact with your client or customer and identify their requirement and give them proper solutions based on your understanding, right? So it usually lasts for 20 minutes to 1 hour. Now this is most important, non-structured in nature. There are no fixed questions in this type of interview. In many of the cases, if you go to let's say HR round of interviews, you may find a specific series of questions, structured questions. So after question number A, you will get question B. After B, you will get question C. So there is a fixed series of questions. But here in depth interview, if you are performing research, if you are identifying the requirement of the user, the type would be non-structured. So based on the response of the client, you will have to throw the next question. Okay, the questions are not fixed. If you give response A, you will get different question. If you give response B, you will get different question. So based on the interaction, a response from the client or customer, interviewer will ask a different question, and that is why it is known as non-structured method, right? Interviewer will often probe to get more feedback. Okay, so you have to ask more questions like why. Okay, so once you ask this type of why, you will be able to get more insights from the customer. If customer asks you to put 3 doors in a single room, you can ask, why do you want to have 3 doors in a single room? Okay, based on the response, again you will have to dig out something more to identify the actual requirement, and if you identify actual requirement, you will be able to propose best possible design to your client or customer. So that is why it must be non-structured and you will have to ask more whys to get more feedback from the client or customer. Okay. Session is usually recorded. Generally, you will have to record this type of interviews because you will not be able to understand full requirement while you are interacting with your client. Right. So in that case, you will have to record this, and later on you can discuss this with multiple colleagues from your organization, and then you can propose best possible solution, because you will not be able to remember all possible points while you have discussed using your interaction. So that is why we need to record this for the analysis purpose, and later on you can use this recording for your analysis purpose. So this is all about depth interview. It is also known as one-to-one interview. So when you want to identify requirement of your client, in that case this would be more beneficial. It has certain limitations also. So to overcome limitations of depth interview, we have another method, that is focus group interview. Now, can someone please tell me what can be the possible problem with the depth interview? We have seen positive signs of depth interview, but can someone please tell me what can be the possible negative side of depth interview?
Uh, Group interview basically based on a group biasness. Let's say if we are going to a site and community is there, so those community will take politics of conversation itself. What is needed for them? It is not very much authentic information. So that's why I guess this. That's why it is not very much true interview when, and this is the basic problem for with group interviews,
No,
because it is very much community based.
right. I'm just asking the negative side of depth interview, not focus group interview.
Oh, it's very one, again it is very one to one discussion, because you never know that that person knowledge could be again it is biased, the information could be very much false.
Right.
So it is something like that. Yeah.
Okay. So basically, you will be able to get limited amount of information when you use depth interview. Suppose, let's say you have been given a task to design office for some IT organization, right? IT organization may have marketing department, may have finance department, may have HR department, may have IT programmers department. So suppose if you involve only one person from programmer side, okay, you will not be able to identify true requirement of all the employees of an organization. So in that case, you will be able to get only limited amount of information. And suppose, let's say the person that you are interviewing is an introvert person. He or she will not be able to talk more, will not be able to give more insights to for your research, right? So in that particular case, you will have to use diverse group of people to have more clarity about the requirement. So in that case, you can use focus group interview. Again, in focus group interview, if you involve all the employees from a single department, the purpose will not going to be served. Right. So in focus group interview, the objective is to include or involve diverse group of people. So you can involve 2 members from marketing, 2 from finance, 2 from HR, 2 from programming. So you will be able to get their requirement, and at the same time you will be able to synchronize the requirement in a specific order. So that will going to help you to deliver or suggest better possible design to your client or customer. So that is the ultimate objective of the focus group. So to overcome problem of limited information and biased information, you can always use focus group, where you have representation from multiple segments, right? So that is why we can use focus group interview. It involves 8 to 10 participants. Okay, so there is always one interviewer and multiple participants. So generally this would be appropriate size, 8 to 10 participants. You can have more than that, But when you increase total number of participants, ultimately you will have to discuss more, you will have to interact more, and that will require much time. And that is why the ideal size of focus group interview would be 8 to 10. You can reduce the size as well, you can increase the size, but then this is the ideal size which you can keep as a part of focus group interview. Respondents are recruited through a screener questionnaire. So suppose, let's say from any organization, if you want to identify a requirement, so you will not be able to involve all the employees from an organization. You will have to select some of them. So to select some of them, we can always use a screening method. So generally, screener questionnaire is used to qualify certain participants for the focus group interview. Now the timing about this particular method is, this lasts about 2 hours. So generally for one-to-one interview, it is from 20 minutes to 1 hour. But because there are more number of participants involved in this particular method, it will last about 2 hours. You can use more timing as well. You can increase the timing to 3 hours, 4 hours, depending on the requirement. But if you increase the timing, ultimately you will not be able to get more insights from the respondents, as they may not be able to sit for a longer period of time. So generally the ideal time for focus group interview is about 2 hours. Again, this is recorded, always tagged or video tagged to assist analysis, because you will not be able to remember all the discussions that has happened during the focus group interview. So in that case, you will have to record this, and this will going to help you in the future for the analysis purpose. So again, there is a similarity in depth group interview and focus group interview for this recording purpose. Online focus groups are now growing because of this technology, like this Google Meet or Microsoft Teams or Zoom or XYZ other technology. These are in demand, right? So online focus group are also growing nowadays because of technology, and this can help you to get diverse information. Okay, not the limited or not the biased information, but this will going to help us to get more insights from a different users that you can synchronize together to propose best or better solution to the client. So this is more appropriate if you want to understand a requirement where multiple parties are involved. Okay, so when you are designing offices, it may be for individual, it may be for group of people. So when there is group involved, you must use focus group interview. If you are designing an office for a single entity, single participant, in that case, you can use depth interview. But if multiple parties are involved, you should go with the focus group interview. Right. So this is the second method which you can use when you are using qualitative research. Now, as we are talking about this qualitative types of researches, qualitative, that means you are not going to get data into numbers. Okay, suppose if I say, what do you feel about a particular building? Okay, office of, let's say, Mukesh Ambani. So you will not be able to get the data or responses in numbers. Someone will say the ambience is very good. Someone will say sitting arrangements are beautiful. Someone will say natural light is coming properly. So this all are non-numeric data that you are getting as a response from the interview, right? Or from the question. So when you are getting non-numeric responses, it will always be qualitative research. And that is why these two techniques are part of qualitative research, right? So let us move ahead with the third technique, that is projective technique. So as I have mentioned, that this can be used to identify subconscious feeling or psychological related factors. So how individual thinks, what is their personality, and how personality is related with their requirements, so that you can identify through this projective technique. So research procedure designed to identify individual subconscious feelings and underlying motivation. What is the motivation of designing a new office? Okay, why they want to spend so much money on their own offices? So we can always identify their underlying motivation, and based on that we can suggest them better options. Okay, if customer or client is ready to spend more money, we can always suggest them luxurious designs. Okay, if customer is not ready to, or if client is not ready to spend much money, we can always suggest them with the budgeted designs, right? So you need to identify their motivation and their thinking and their feelings, and accordingly you can suggest them better proposals. And that is why if we want to identify, if you are if you are looking for their subconscious feeling or psychological factors, in that case projective techniques can help us to identify that. Now this consists of variety of discussed tests, right? So there are again 4 techniques under this projective technique if you want to identify the psychological factor. So these are 4 techniques. First is word association, second is sentence completion, third one is photo visual for storytelling, and the fourth one is role playing. Okay, generally these 2 are very good for the management related research, but then to identify their thinking, their experience, their knowledge level, we can use word association and sentence completion. So here you will have to give your respondents words and ask them to suggest you the response whichever comes in their mind in the first instance. So suppose if I give you orange, okay, so whatever word comes to your mind which is related to this will be your response, and once you get the responses you can always identify whether the person is a positive personality or negative personality, or person is ready to spend more money or not ready to spend more money. So if you want to identify it, you can always use word association, but then word should be related with the requirement that you want to identify. You cannot give them random words, right? So if you want to identify color combination for the design, you can always suggest colors and get the response. If you are looking for, let's say, light related responses, in that particular case you will have to give them words which are related with that particular topic, right? So don't give them random words, identify some of the keywords which can be related with the response that you want to identify from the client. So word association, give them word and try to get the response whichever comes in their mind for the first instance. Sentence completion, again give them incomplete statements and ask them to complete statement. They are going to complete the statements based on their own thinking, based on their own requirement, based on their own experiences. So this will going to tell us what is their actual thinking, what is their actual requirement. So give them incomplete statement. Let me give you one random example. A person is running for, now this is incomplete statement, a person may run for any XYZ reason, right? So ask them to complete the statement, and based on the statement you will have to analyze and we can identify the requirement. Now because this is projective technique and this is related with the qualitative research, you have to use experts opinion. Okay, normal person will not be able to analyze data in appropriate manner because it is always subjective. Suppose if I have been given that person is running, I can interpret that the person is running because he is late. A person is running because he wants to go for the exercise. A person is running because he is participating in the race. Okay, so different person will interpret meaning of same statement differently. Okay, so here you need to get help from the experts for this subjective analysis, and once you have experts opinion, you can always rely on that to finalize the requirement from the client side. The next one is photo and visual for storytelling. You need to give your clients or customers a picture, series of pictures, and ask them to develop a story to identify their underlying requirements and motivation. Okay, so generally to identify whether the person is a positive person, optimist person, or pessimist person, we can use this method. Okay, so we can give them different types of pictures and ask them to develop a story, and by their story we can analyze their sentiments. Okay, so again this can be used to identify their psychological thinking pattern or their behavior. And last one is role playing. Generally this is used in management field. So you have to give your client or customer a situation and a specific actor, and they have to act or they have to play a role as a person, pretending a person, right? So suppose if I give example of CEO of some company, I give them a situation and ask them to act as a CEO. If you have been CEO, what will you do in this particular situation? So person has to act as a the person is original CEO of the company, and that will going to help us how do person react in different types of situation. So if you have been given tense situation, how do you react? Do you get angry easily, or do you calmly solve the problem? So this will going to help us to identify temperament of an individual. So if it is related with your field, you can use them, but generally these two are useful for management field, right? So these four are part of projective techniques, which can be used as a part of qualitative research. So we have seen three methods. First one, depth interview, that is one-to-one interview. Focus group interview is the second one, one-to-many type of interview, and third one is projective technique. So projective technique generally used to identify psychology of an individual, of a client, or maybe a customer, right? So there we have four methods. You can use word association, you can use sentence completion, you can use photo or visual storytelling, or you can use role playing, depending on the requirement and for for which person you want to identify psychological factors, right? So these are the four methods under projective techniques. And the last one, as I have mentioned, that there are four major techniques for qualitative research: depth interview, focus group interview, projective techniques, and the fourth one is metaphor analysis. Now this is similar to photo or visual storytelling, but the only difference is you will be given multiple metaphors. Metaphors are nothing but images. Okay, so you will be given images that are not related with each other. So one, for the first instance, I can give you image of some cricketer. In second instance, I can give you image of some fun park. In third instance, I can give you image of some book. Okay, so non-related images are given to the clients and ask them to develop a story. So basically, we can understand the thinking pattern, the requirement, the personality type of an individual using this metaphor analysis. So in storytelling, visual storytelling, we give them 2 or 3 pictures, but here you will have to give them more than 5 pictures, non-related pictures, okay, and ask them to develop a story. So the best known method for metaphor analysis is ZMAT approach. ZMAT approach. So that is known as Zaltman metaphor elicitation technique. So in that case, you can always combine collage of images where non-related images are given to the clients and ask them to develop their story, their part of story, to identify individual thinking and their behavior. So the last two techniques, projective techniques and this metaphor analysis, are always used to identify psychological factors. Okay, so these are used to identify psychological factors of an individual. So it is important to understand psychological factors of an individual when you are proposing a specific design to your client, right? And for that purpose, we can use either projective techniques, any one from 4 projective techniques, or you can use metaphor analysis. But then for analysis purpose, you need an expert, because this is always subjective in nature. In many of the cases, once you have data or responses from the client or customer, you can hire multiple experts and you can see the common points from their analysis and consider them to develop your proposal to the client, right? So it is not always that you have to hire only one expert, and based on the analysis of that expert, you will have to propose a solution. But in many of the cases, you can hire many experts, and then you can identify common points from their analysis, and accordingly you can design or propose design to the client or customer. So these are the 4 techniques which we can use as a part of qualitative research. Now, it is not always that you can use any one of these. Depending on the requirement, you can use multiple techniques, right? So you have to use questionnaire, you have to use one-to-one interview, you have to use focus group interview. So you have to use combination of methods to arrive at the better solution to a given problem. So whenever you are performing the research, it is not always to use a single type of method. You can use multiple methods depending on your requirement. You can use experimentation as well. You can use observations as well. You can use computer simulations as well, right? So it depends on your objective, your research problem. and accordingly you will have to use the methods. So we have just discussed 4 methods under qualitative research. The other type, okay, is quantitative research. Okay, so I have discussed that under primary research there are 2 types. One is qualitative and second one is quantitative. So for qualitative we had 4 methods: depth interview, focus group interview, projective techniques, and the 4th one was metaphor analysis. But under quantitative there are 3. First one is observation, second one is experimentation, and third one is survey questionnaire. There are also other types of researches as well, like cross-sectional research, longitudinal research, but then all of those researches are part of either qualitative or quantitative. So there are major 2 categories of primary research: qualitative and quantitative. And under quantitative there are again 3 methods: observations, experimentation, and survey questionnaires. So this method can be used when you want to identify facts and solutions. So if you are ready with the pinpointed problem, if you are very much clear with the problem, you can identify some of the facts related with the problem, okay, or some of the solutions that can be used to overcome the problem. So to find solutions, to identify the facts, we can use quantitative research. As the name suggests, this always deals with numerical data. Okay, so if you are dealing with numerical data, you can always go for quantitative research, irrespective of the main approach, whether you want to go for problem identification or for the solution. If you are dealing with numerical data, you must use quantitative research. And under quantitative research there are 3 methods. First one is observation, second one is experimentation, and third one and most popular one is survey questionnaire. Observations, generally you can use observers, okay, manual or man-made observations, or you can use some devices, electronic or electrical devices for the observation. Suppose, let's say, if you want to identify temperature, as a person, as a human being, you will not be able to identify accurate temperature. You can feel that the temperature is humid, the temperature is cool, or the temperature is warm, but you will not be able to identify what is the exact temperature in Celsius or in Fahrenheit. So for that you have to use mechanical device as well, right? So generally observations are used to confirm finding of qualitative research. So let me give you an example, normal example, which may not be related with your field. But let's say in one-to-one interview with the employees, if the employer is asking, when are you leaving the office? Okay, the office timings are 9 to 5, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. These are the standard office time. And I just want to identify when the employees are leaving an organization. So if I'm asking that using one-to-one interview, let's say the response of the employee is like employee is leaving the organization at 5:30 p.m. Okay, generally, usually the employee leaves an organization at 5:30 p.m. on an average. Okay, sometimes employees leave at 4:30, sometimes 6 or 6:30 as well. But the standard or the average time is 5:30. Now, if I want to verify, okay, these are the findings from qualitative research. Now if I want to verify that, I have to observe the employee. If he or she is leaving the organization at 5:30, suppose majority of cases, suppose let's say if I'm observing the employee for 1 full week, and during that particular week employee is more or less leaving the organization at 3 p.m. so I can verify that the person has not given me the true response, the actual fact. Okay, so in one-to-one you may get number of responses, but in reality if you want to verify, you can use observation. Now there are certain underlying assumption of this method. Whenever you are observing something, you don't have to tell your respondents that they are being observed. If you tell your client or customer that they are being observed, they will change the behavior. So the major assumption here is you don't have to tell your respondents or customers or clients that they are being observed to get the real behavior from the clients or the customers, right? You can use mechanical or electrical or electronic device for observations as well. If the device are appropriate, if devices are not having any kind of error, you can directly take the observations as a part of the data analysis purpose. Okay. In some cases, you can use checklist approach as well. What do you want to observe? Okay, so you can make the checklist and possible options, and you can simply tick mark on that according to your observation. So suppose, let's say if I want to identify behavior of customer in a mall setup. Okay, so the first thing that I want to observe is, are customers price oriented or not? Okay, so in that case, I can make checklist. The customer sees price tag whenever they see a specific product. There are two possible options, yes and no. Now, if customer is entering into a mall and looking at the price tag directly at the first instance, I can put yes on, I can put tick mark on the yes, right? So likewise, you can make a checklist with possible options, and based on your observations, you can tick mark on the possible responses, and accordingly you can convert them into numbers, and then you can use it for the analysis purpose. So this is all about observations. You can use observations to verify something or to identify something as well, right? So for verification purpose also, or for digging out something new also, you can use observation. The next one is experimentation. So experimentation is used when you are dealing with some scientific background. Okay, so generally if we want to identify let's say effect of some drug on patient, okay, in that case experimentation would be used. In your case, you can use experimentation to identify impact of some chemical or some material on the construction or strength of the construction, right? So in that case, you have to use experimentation. Now, generally, experimentation involves two phases. First one is pre, and second one is post. And here, you will have to provide a treatment. It is known as controlled treatment. So let me give you one example. Suppose, let's say, you want to identify effectiveness of celebrity endorsement on sales of a product. You want to identify effect of celebrity endorsed on sales of the product. So in that case, you have to measure sales, let's say in Indian rupees for February month. You can endorse the celebrity and run the advertisement during March. And now after running this advertisement, you can again measure the sales in INR for the month of April, right? So this is pre-part where we have not endorsed the celebrity. Now, after endorsing celebrity, we need to run that particular campaign. And after that, this is the post segment where you have to measure the same parameter again. Now, in experimentation, you will have to assume certain things, that the parameter which you are measuring during pre must be the same during post as well. So suppose if you are measuring sales in Indian rupees during pre and you are measuring, let's say, advertising expense in INR during post, so that will not going to serve our purpose of experimentation, because parameters are not matching, and when parameters are not matching, you cannot use them as a part of experimentation. Same is the case with your field. Suppose you want to identify effect of some chemical or material on the strength of the construction, right? So the material or the chemical will be treated as a treatment. So before you use this material, you will have to measure the strength in whatever unit, and after that, after using the material, again you will have to measure strength in the same unit. Okay, so same parameter and same unit must be used in the experimentation technique, right? So these are the assumptions of experimentation. Again, suppose let's say during pre you have interviewed 3 persons, A, B and C, and then you are giving them a treatment, and during post you are measuring the responses of C, D and E. So the clients are different here, or customers are different here. Okay, so you cannot use this approach. Whatever client you have used, whatever respondents or customers you have used during the pre-research must be the same in the post-research as well. So parameter unit and the respondents, that is the client, must remain same in both the cases, pre-test and post-test. Suppose, let's say, if you have interviewed A, B, and C during pre, C, D, and E during post. Now, in this case, it is not appropriate, and to make this appropriate, we have to remove responses of DE and AB, because we must get responses of a same respondent, same client, same parameter, and in same unit. So that is why you need to remove the unique customers from pre and post. If the customers are same, you can keep them for the analysis. If they are not same, you need to remove them from the analysis purpose, right? The last one in this quantitative research is survey questionnaires. Okay, so generally this is very much popular and easy method to get the requirements from the client or customer in any field. This method is very much popular and easy, but then this is not much reliable. Okay, generally the questionnaire studies are not reliable, as one can always pretend to be different while giving responses to the survey questionnaire. Generally, in our institute, if we give project to the students will fill 50 customers on their own and pretending that they are from the customers or from the clients, right? So generally this is more easy, popular, but it is not reliable at the same time. So when you design questionnaire, you have to keep certain things in your mind. So whatever questions you include in your questionnaire must be aligned with the objectives of the research study. So whenever you decide for title, you will have to define narrow objectives, right? So whatever questions you include, it must be related with the objectives of the research study. If you include random questions, ultimately your research finding will not be aligned with the original requirement, right? So questions must be aligned with the objectives. There are multiple types of questions that you can include in the questionnaire, right? So there are two types of question. One is closed end and second one is open end, right? So in closed end, you are giving specific options. Okay, let's say, do you want more doors in a single room, more than one doors in a single room? Yes and no. So here you have been given a specific options. Now from these two options only you will have to give the response. So either yes or no. Now in this closed end, you are forcing your clients or customers to answer in a specific manner. Okay, if they don't want to reveal the answer, then also you are forcing them to give answers either in yes or no. Okay, suppose if you want to be in third category, can't say, right? So in that case, you cannot use this option, because there are only two options available with us, yes and no, right? So you are forcing your respondents, and whenever you are using this close-ended, you will have to ensure that almost all possible categories are included. Let me give you one example where you want to measure demographic of your client. Let's say income. Okay, and income, you have kept three options: less than 10,000, between 10 to 20,000, and 20 to 30,000. Now these are the three options available with you, right? Now as a client, if my income is 50,000, where can I give my response? Okay, there is no option available to give my response. So forcefully I have to select any one of these three, and that will not going to serve researchers purpose. Okay, that will not going to give us clear picture of the income of an individual. So whenever you use close-ended, you have to ensure that you have included all possible options. You can include greater than 30, right? So all possible options are covered in this options, right? So in that case, whenever you use closed-ended, ensure that you have included all possible categories. Now categories must not be biased. Okay, so let me give you another example. Income, let's say less than 10,000, 10 to 20,000, 20 to 30,000, 30 to 40,000, and greater than 40,000. Suppose if my income is 20,000, which group I have to select? the second one or third one. Now here that clarity is not present, right? So you will have to ensure that biasness is not there in all possible options. So you can always include 10 to 20,000, then 21 to 30,000, or 20,000 1 rupee to 30,000, 30,000 1 rupee to 40,000, and greater than 40,000. So that there is always a single possibility of response from the client or customer side, right? So you will have to ensure all these things whenever you are designing a questionnaire for using close-ended question. Open-ended questions are the subjective responses. Okay, so to analyze open-ended responses, again we need an expert because it is always subjective in nature. So suppose, let's say the question is like, what do you feel about India? Okay, now this is completely open-ended. Anyone can give any response, so you will not be able to judge the response properly using a number. So in that case, again you will have to use content analysis or sentiment analysis as a method for data analysis, and again you need an expert for the actual analysis of this type of data. So open-ended can have any possible answer. Okay, you can get X answer, Y answer, Z answer, any possible answer, and it is always subjective in nature. So based on individuals' thinking, experience, their knowledge, they will always going to respond. So generally, try to avoid open-ended question. These open-ended questions are always for qualitative research. If you want to understand the situation, in that case, it is okay to include open-ended questions. But if you want to identify facts or the solutions, do not include open-ended questions. Rather, you can give them close-ended questions with all the possibilities without having any biasness, right? You can include 5-point Likert scale as well. Okay, so I would like to have more than one door in my office. Okay, and then you can give them options: strongly disagree, agree, neutral, strongly disagree, neutral, agree, and strongly agree. So you are giving them 5 options, and according to their agreeableness to a specific statement, they will rate using this 5-point Likert scale, right? So again, you can measure satisfaction using this 5-point Likert scale as well. So highly dissatisfied, neutral, satisfied, and highly satisfied. So if you want to measure the intensity of their agreeableness, intensity of their satisfaction level, you can use 5-point Likert scale. Generally, for customer care related activities, they use 10-point scale. Okay, that is known as bipolar scale. So you have, are you satisfied with the suggestions given by the customer care executive? Yes and no, and in between you have 10 points: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So if you have rated 10, that means you are completely satisfied with the response that you have got from the customer care executive. Suppose if it is 7, you can say that you are somewhat satisfied, not completely dissatisfied. But suppose if you want to identify intensity of the response, in that case we can use bipolar adjectives as well. So this is known as 10-point scale. So depending on the requirement, questions requirement, and aligning the question with the objective, you can use either close-ended or open-ended. You can use Likert scale for agreeableness or satisfaction, or you can use bipolar adjectives as well, right? So these are the possible questions. There are more number of questions, more types of questions also possible, but these are more popular questions that can be used for the questionnaire research studies. So I have already discussed this. Observations helps researcher gain an in-depth understanding of relationship between people, products by watching them, using it. Helps researcher gain better understanding of what product symbolizes. Experimentation generally controlled with some variable, so it is controlled using a treatment like celebrity endorsed or material used or drug used. Okay. Questionnaire, generally you can include multiple types of questions. Now these are the ways in which you can get responses through questionnaire. You can circulate questionnaire through mail, you can use questionnaire study through telephone, through personal interview, or you can circulate it using online platform. Now these are certain pros and cons of the questionnaire research study. So it has cost. So if you use mail, the cost will be on the lower end. Telephone requires moderate. Personal interview high because it includes the time related cost as well, and to reaching out each and every individual client and customer, it is highly costly. So these are pros and cons given for the different criteria for the questionnaire related survey, right? So we have seen three methods as a part of quantitative research. First one is observation, second one is experimentation, and third one is survey questionnaire, right? So these are the three methods which you can use if you want to go for quantitative research, or if you want to go for the solution to a specific problem. Now when you use questionnaire, there is a concept of validity and reliability. You have to ensure that the questionnaire that you have used is validated. It has a validity. It is not a kind of expiry date, right? The meaning of validity here is different. I will explain the meaning of validity, but then validity and reliability must be ensured when you use questionnaire. So let us understand validity first. If a study has validity, it collects the appropriate data for the study. The major important word here is appropriate. Now, what do you mean by this? Can someone please tell me what is the meaning of validity? This is basically related with the questionnaire, right? You have to assume that this is the validity is for the questionnaire study only. So if a study has validity, it collects appropriate data for the study. So can someone please tell me what is appropriate data? Okay, suppose let's say you have designed a questionnaire where you have one parameter, required space. Okay, so if you want to identify how much is the requirement from the client or customer side, this is a parameter which will measure the requirement space. Now someone will write 1000, someone will write 125, someone will write, let's say, 300. Now this all are inappropriate data because this 1000 is in square feet, this is in meter feet, square meter, right? Square meter, and again this is in square feet. So whenever you are getting analysis using various statistical technique, suppose if you use average, okay, so that will going to give us false representation of the actual data, because someone required this in square feet, this is in square meter, again this is in square feet. So this is inappropriate data. So you have to ensure that the variable or the data that you are measuring is appropriate. So whenever you design a questionnaire, you have to specify in which format you want to get the data. So required space in square feet. So always you will be able to get data in square feet. Okay, suppose if you are measuring income, okay, so let's say if you use income, someone will write income in dollar, someone will write income in pound, someone will write income in, let's say, rupees. Okay, so you will have to be specific in which unit you want to get income from your client or from your customer. Okay, suppose let's say if you are specified income in rupees, income in rupees, okay, is this appropriate data according to you? Yes or no?
No,
No. How?
because it has not specified the time frame. Is it monthly or yearly or?
Right. So you will have to specify that. Do you want to get the income of the client monthly basis or yearly basis, right? So in rupees in year or yearly income. Now, is it appropriate? Yes or no? Can we say that this is a validated question? Yes or no?
Partially, yes.
Okay.
But then for month, we have to limit the salary income as well. That how much income a person or a client is earning in a month or that way. And after that calculation, we are further would be more specific for the question.
Okay, so you will have to be more specific in this as well. Do you want to get individual income or do you want to get family income? Someone will write family yearly income. Someone will write his or her own individual yearly income, right? So you will have to be very specific for the validation of your question, right? So if you have validated responses, appropriate responses, you can say that the questionnaire is validated. Are you all clear with this? Yes or no? Do you have any doubt?
Yes, sir. We are clear, sir.
Okay, fine. So that is validity, right? So whatever data you want to get, you are actually getting data in that format only. So that ensures the validity of the question or the questionnaire. Now, moving forward with the reliability. Now, study has reliability if the same question asked to similar sample produce the same finding. Suppose if I ask you this question, I want to have more than one door in my office. Okay, and there are five options: strongly disagree, neutral, agree, and strongly agree. Now if you ask this questions to me today, let's say I have rated for strongly agree, I want more than one door in my office. If you ask same question after 1 week, let's say if I'm selecting this disagree, that means my questionnaire is not reliable. For a specific time period, if you ask the same question to same person or to same client or same similar sample, you must be able to get same response. If you are getting difference in the responses, your question or questionnaire is not reliable. So whenever you use questionnaire, you need to ensure that for similar kind of question to similar sample or similar person, you must get the same response for a specific time period. Now specific time period, that means you have to define the time period for which you want to get similar response. You may not get similar response if you ask the same person after a year. Okay, during a year, person's preferences may get different, their requirements may get different. So you have to define the time span for which you want to get similar response. So during a month, you must get same response to the same question from a same client, right? So if this is satisfying, if this condition is satisfying, you can say that the questionnaire that you have used is reliable. So whenever you use questionnaire, you need to ensure validity and reliability of the questionnaire. And if this is not so, you have to change the questionnaire. And to ensure validity and reliability, we must go with the pilot research, a small scale research where, let's say, if you want to get responses from 1,000 clients or customers, now for pilot, you will have to limit it to 50 or maybe 30. Okay, and by using pilot, you can ensure validity and reliability of the questionnaire. There is one measure in statistic that is known as Cronbach's alpha. Cronbach's alpha. This is the measure which we can use as a statistical test to ensure the reliability of the questionnaire. Validity you have to manually ensure, but reliability, there are statistical tests that you can use to ensure reliability of the questionnaire after getting responses using pilot study, right? So this is about validity and reliability. The next one is sampling and data collection. Okay, I will go through the first slide itself. Now here, when you are conducting qualitative, once you select the method, you will have to go for sample design. Now sample design deals with the selection of the sample. Now when you are talking about sampling and data collection, you need to understand two broad concepts like population and sample. Suppose if you want to identify requirement of all builders present in Ahmedabad region. Now it is not possible to get responses from all available builders in Ahmedabad, right? So all available builders in Ahmedabad will be treated as the population, as you will not be able to get responses from all the builders. You will have to use the sampling, where you can select some of the builders from Ahmedabad and you can get responses from them, right? So if it is not possible to get responses from the population, you can select sample, and in 99% of cases we will not be able to get data from the entire population. So you will have to work with the sample, and we are assuming by selecting sample that sample is the true representation of the population. So whatever samples, whatever builders you are selecting to identify the requirement are the representation of the population for a specific area, right? So this is the assumption when you are dealing with sample. So samples are subset of the population used to estimate characteristic of the entire population. So we are estimating characteristic of the entire population by assuming that this is the true representation of the population, right? So when you want to use this sampling, you need to use these three questions. You need to ask yourself as a researcher, whom to survey, whom do you want to survey, how many to survey, and how to select them. So whom to survey will going to tell us sampling unit. Suppose if you want to identify requirement of a builder, then you would consider builders present in some city as sampling unit. So whom do you want to get response from will be the answer for the first question, that is whom to survey, and it is nothing but your sampling unit of your research. Second one is how many to survey. How many builders responses you want for your research study. So that is nothing but a sample size. How many samples or respondents you want to consider for your research study. So that is sample size. Now there are certain logical methods by which you can use size of the sample, size of a sample. You cannot randomly decide that you are going to get 100 builders response, you are going to get 50 builders response. It must be logical in nature. So generally for large research you can use 1% of the total population. So suppose let's say if there are 5,000 builders available in Ahmedabad city, and if you want to go for large scale research study, you can always take 50, that is the 1% of the total population, 50 as a sample size. The second method is, suppose let's say there are 5 questions in your questionnaire. If you are using questionnaire study, okay, if you are using questionnaire and there are 5 questions in the questionnaire, for validation of one question you need at least 10 responses. So if there are 5 questions, you need 10 10 10 10 10, so total 50 respondents. So 50 would be sample size. So these are some logical techniques. There are more than that that you can use to identify what would be the ideal or sufficient sample size for your research study. Okay, and the third question is how to select them. So you need to use a logical technique for the sample selection. You cannot randomly go to any builder's office and ask them for a specific response. So there are 2 methods. One is probability sampling and second one is non-probability sampling. So if you know the total size of the population, let's say if you know that 5,000 builders are there in Ahmedabad, so you have to use probability sampling. If you don't know how many builders are present in Ahmedabad city, right? So in that case, population is unknown, and when there is unknown population, you use non-probability sampling. So if you know population size, use probability sampling. If you are not sure about the total size of the population, use non-probability sampling. So in case if you want to use this first method to identify sample size, you must be aware about the total population size. And if population size is unknown, you can use this technique where number of questions are multiplied with 10 to identify population size. So there is always a logic behind selecting a specific method to select the responses or clients for your research study. So under probability, there are 4 methods. I'm not going to discuss that in detail, but I'm just briefing you the name of the methods. So simple random method, simple random sampling. Second one is systematic random sampling. Third one is cluster sampling. And the fourth one is stratified sampling. So these are the sampling technique under probability if you know the population, and under non-probability one is convenience. Generally most of the researchers use this, but for professional researches, for PhD thesis or client based researches, convenience is not appropriate, right? So the first method is convenience, second one is judgmental, third one is quota, and fourth one is snowball sampling. So if you don't know the population, you can use any one of this. Okay, you can use combination of this as well. Suppose if you are performing a research to identify satisfaction level of credit card users in Gujarat with special reference to Anand city. Okay, if you want to identify satisfaction level of credit card users in Gujarat with specific reference to Anand city. Now you know what is the population of Gujarat, and from bank you will be able to know how many credit card users in Gujarat, right? So that is why you know the population. When you know the population, you will have to use probability sampling, but you don't know how many of them are residing in Anand city. You know total number of credit card users for Gujarat, but you don't know how many numbers of credit card users present in Anand city. So at at state level you can use probability sampling, but at district level either you can use judgmental or maybe quota sampling depending on the requirement or your convenience, right? So this is about how to select them. So this reveals type of technique that we want to use to select our clients, customers or respondents for our research study. So researchers must choose probability or non-probability sampling as a part of selecting the sample, right? So this is it. This is all about research process, different steps involved. Now let me take your questions one by one. Thank you very much. Yeah, any question or any doubt, if you have any in any part of the presentation or any method, if you are not understand properly, just ask me question. I can give you some other example.
Hello.
Yeah, please.
I'd like to ask you about the model. Many times models are also prepared for coming out to some final output of the research. We didn't discuss any model.
Okay, can you please elaborate your question? I'm not able to understand the situation. You're talking about a model, right?
Yes, model.
Yeah. So what do you want to know about the model?
Where it will fit in what you have explained, where exactly making a model would come in.
Okay, just give me 1 minute. I'll share one more document with you. Okay, are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, fine.
Yes,
now, this particular model is related with brand switching behavior of mobile phone users in Gujarat. Okay, the title of this particular research is brand switching behavior of mobile phone users in Gujarat. So suppose if you are currently using MI phone and the next time if you are going for purchase, you will switch to Apple. So we want to identify, we want to predict the brand switching behavior, and for that purpose, based on literature review, I have identified some of the variable that could be a possible variable to predict the brand switching. Now I have divided this model into 4 different variables: independent variables, which are going to affect brand switching; intervening variable, which can affect brand switching. There are certain moderators like demographic variable can also affect the brand switching, and ultimately the dependent variable, that is switching intention. Now this is the model which is the outcome of the literature review. Past literature have suggested that overall satisfaction can lead towards brand switching behavior. Service quality of the mobile phone can lead towards brand switching behavior. Commitment of a company towards customer can affect the brand switching behavior. So I have identified some of the variables which can affect brand switching. So I have developed this particular model based on literature review. Now this is the model which I have developed from the literature review. Now I have to test this model using a primary survey, whether this model is applicable to the users of Gujarat. Okay, so for that purpose, I have to collect data which are related with this particular variable. So I have to design a questionnaire or any appropriate method which can give me data related with this particular variable. And at the end, I have to ensure that this model is applicable, or some of the variable you can always drop after analysis of the data. So when you want to develop a model which can be used for the prediction purpose, okay, generally we can use this approach where from the literature review you can conceptualize a model, and using data analysis you can confirm your model which can be used by somebody else in that particular field.
True, but there will be some kind of software involvement also, or there will be some calculations between the two. This your write up, and there's a line there. So how this that whatever you have written will come to the next stage. So in between, I think so there will be some kind of a device or some formulas, if statistical formulas may come in.
Yes.
So only then the model will work for other people also.
Definitely,
Because,
definitely.
that data will be different, but the formulas will be same.
Right.
Maybe.
Right. So in this particular case, what you need to do is, there are so many techniques. Okay, statistical techniques. You can use artificial intelligence. I've used machine learning techniques in this particular to confirm the model, where you need to use regression. And out of this regression, you can use random forest, you can use bagging, boosting. Now, these are the methods which we can use to develop model. We have conceptualized the model. Now, to test the model, we have to develop the same using the data which I have collected through questionnaire or through any other means. Now, once you have data with you, you will have to use these methods like random forest or bagging or boosting. Now, this will always give us accuracy of the model as well. So what if, suppose let's say if I have collected 1500 data from mobile phone users in Gujarat, right? So I have to divide this data into building and testing stage. So for build, I can use 1200 responses, and remaining 300, I have to test whether the model which I have developed through 1200 responses is still applicable to 300 unknown responses or not, right? So you will have to apply building and testing, development and testing approach. And once you get accuracy more than 90% using these techniques, then and only then you can confirm the conceptualized model. If you are not getting accuracy more than 90%, you cannot suggest the model to be used somewhere else in the same context.
True, that is very true. But there will be some kind of softwares which I think so all of us also should get acquainted with, like Oracle and other
Oracle is basically a database, right? So generally to store the data, we can use Oracle. But then when you want to go for the confirmatory analysis, model development, you can use SPSS, you can use R, you can use Python. So these are the techniques or the languages or the softwares which we can use when we want to confirm our model using different statistical techniques or AI related, artificial intelligence related techniques.
Thank
So
you. Thank you.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. Anything else?
Hello, Binit sir.
Yeah, please.
Sir, we have faced a few problems related to electronic mediums when we try to generate a Google form and we share those to the multiple participants and we try to collect those data. How reliable those data are, and are we do we have some mechanism to streamline those data and use it for our research?
Absolutely. First of all, you need to ensure that for what purpose you are collecting this data. If it is for professional research, you cannot circulate Google form directly to the respondents because it is a convenient sampling. You have circulated the Google form to XYZ number of respondents, so you are not going to get proper response. Suppose, let's say, if you have circulated the Google form which is related with the architectural design or a research study, but then the responses that you are getting is also from 5-year-old boy or 10-year-old boy. So you will have to ensure the response, actual response that you have got is from the sampling unit that you have already decided. Okay. Once you decide that you want to get a response from any XYZ user, then you can go ahead with the reliability test using SPSS. As I have mentioned, that to ensure reliability, we can use Cronbach's alpha. So whatever responses you get, you can convert your responses into Excel sheet and then convert the categories into numbers for your convenience, and ultimately you can put these numbers directly into SPSS using Cronbach's alpha, where you can ensure the reliability of the data. So it is possible to get reliability of your data, but you need to ensure that the responses which you have got is from the intended audience. Yes.
Yes. Okay.
So you can use that, but then you need to ensure the reliability part using a statistical test.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Yes. Anything?
I think we can go ahead with the vote of thanks. Kea, are you ready with it?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
On behalf of College of Architecture, SVIT Vasad, I thank Professor Binit Patel for the insightful webinar on research and dissertation. Sorry. It is definitely going to benefit us in our upcoming research and dissertation of the final year BR. I thank
Can anybody else present on behalf of Kea?
librarian,
I think
Shri
her network
Rajendra
is not
Patel,
okay.
for being the link between the
One second,
COA
ma'am. She is
Vasad,
joining
SVIT
from my PC.
Vasad and Professor Binit Patel. I thank all the participants. Sorry. On behalf of College of Architecture, SVIT Vasad, I thank Professor Binit Patel for the insightful webinar on research and dissertation. It is definitely going to benefit us in our upcoming research and dissertation. Um, Dissertation of the final year B Act. I thank our librarian, Shri Rajendra Patel, for being the link in between COA SVIT Vasad and Professor Binit Patel. I thank all the participants for attending the webinar. Last but not the least, I thank Management SVIT Vasad and our principal Professor Sailesh Nair for encouraging the webinar team to arrange such webinars in benefit of the students. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And if you have any query in the future related with the research or any thesis or dissertation, you can always contact me. My email ID is binitpatel.mba@charuset.ac.in. So you can drop me an email. I definitely go through it and will respond to your queries, right? So don't hesitate. If you have any query, if you need any help from me, you can always contact me through my email ID. Right? So thank you very much all.
Thank you so much, sir, for this wonderful insight.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.